After qualifiers, another cool option to select a particular part of the video clip for correction is using power windows. These are like masks and help to select part of the video clip based on its location in the frame, not based on the color unlike in qualifiers. So here I have added an additional serial node by pressing Option S on Mac operating system or Alt S on Windows. And now using this node, I will be explaining the concept of windows in this lesson. So when you press this button, you have many different options for different shapes of windows. You have square, circle, line, arc, etc. So in order to explain the concept of windows, let me just go to the color wheels for a moment and let's apply some color to this whole clip. So I apply this bright red to the highlights, to the midtones, as well as to the shadows. And I'm using this bright color so that I can clearly show you what happens when you use windows. So now you can see that when I change these values, everything turns red. But let's see what happens when I apply one of these windows. So let's click on this square window, and you see that immediately the effect is restricted to inside this window. And I can grab it and move it anywhere else, and only the area within that region will receive that effect. Similarly, I can go again to these color wheels and I can increase the gamma, and you can see the brightness increasing only within that particular region. Nothing else is changing. Similarly, I can go to the blur tool and increase the radius, and that makes it blurry. And you can see that any kind of adjustments I am making, as long as this window is selected, the effects or color adjustments I apply will be only restricted towards inside of this window. I can rotate this window by grabbing this marker, and whenever it turns to a curved arrow, I can rotate it, and you can see that the effect also rotates with that. Similarly, I can grab on one of these edges and resize that, and in this way I can fit it to any rectangular kind of shape in the video I want. Similarly, if need be, you can also distort this rectangular shape by grabbing on one of these corners and moving them around, and in this way you can make it an irregular shape. So that was the square shaped window, and I can reset that, and now we can also do the same. Let me undo the blur, and now I can go back to the window, and let's apply the same effect to a circular kind of window, and you can see that immediately the effect now reduces to a circular shape. And with many of these shapes, you can see these white dots around the edges with red borders. So you can basically grab them and move them away, and in this way you can soften the edges, and that creates a nice feathering effect. And in front of all these windows, you will see this kind of button. So here, all of these are disabled because we are not using any of those windows, but here this is enabled. So this square shape with the circle, filled circle inside that. So this is basically the flip button. So right now you see the adjustments are taking place inside this window. But if I click that, now everything is flipped. So instead of effects being applied inside, now they are applied to all areas except the inside. So this is basically similar to flipping the effect. So in this way you can flip the mask. So that was square and circular shaped. Then we have this line, this arc, and let's play around with this arc. So with this arc, whichever points I keep clicking, I can add more and more corners, but nothing happens until you close this shape. So you see this is the last point, this is the first point, and when I join them, now this shape is closed and the effect is restricted towards inside of that. And again, we can flip it, we can move it back, reset that. So in addition to this kind of cornered shape, I can keep dragging my cursor. Instead of clicking at different points, I can just keep dragging my cursor, and in this way, whenever I close it, now we have this kind of shape with no sharp corners because I didn't click it, I rather drag my mouse around. So in this way I can define a custom shape. And the cool thing is, if there are any imperfections in your first try while creating this shape, you can for any of these shapes, you can keep moving these points around and you will see that the color adjustments will also adjust accordingly in real time. So this is a really cool function, and you can take as long as you want to perfect this shape, and you don't have to worry about the color adjustments. And in addition to all of that, you can even create multiple shapes at the same time, multiple windows. So let's create a square window. Let's create a circular window as well. And now we have two shapes with color adjustments being applied to both. If I turn on my highlighter, these are the shapes where I am applying the color adjustments, and you can see some nice feathering. So now we have two masks together, and if I bring them so that they overlap with each other, now nothing is happening, but I can play around with these buttons, and I can adjust them in such a way that only the overlapping region gets this effect. So right now it's not very prominent, but let me move it sideways. And now you see there is no area that is getting that effect, but as soon as they start overlapping, here you see that effect. So this is really cool. And in fact, there are a lot of ways to manipulate the power windows and decide where the adjustments will be applied. For now, let me just go back and reset this weird orange color, and we are back to the original colors. And now let me actually use this square window or rectangular window to make it a little brighter, just for the sake of this example. So I can de-shape it, or whichever way I want. I can edit this shape until it completely overlaps this board. And now I can go to the color wheels, and this was quite dark, so basically this was a part of the shadows. And I can increase the lift by, let me just see what is being selected. Nothing is being selected. Why? Because both of these are on. So if I turn them off, now you see the window is selecting the board as we intended. And now whatever adjustments I make, only this area will get those adjustments. So I can maybe increase the lift, and you will see that this board will start getting brighter. This area is representing that board. So you see when I move this, just keep an eye on this. As I move this wheel, you can see how it moves up and down. And this is basically originally the part of shadows, but I am moving it up by changing the brightness. So now just look at this board and this board. You can clearly see that this is without it, this is with this, and clearly by you making use of these windows, we can apply localized color adjustments. So that is how we can use these windows. And let me go ahead and reset this color adjustment as well as this window. And now there is a last option for windows, and that is this gradient. So this is also very interesting and very useful tool. So the way it works is whichever color adjustment we apply using this window, that color adjustment starts along this line and then in the direction of this arrow, it starts decreasing. Okay, so whatever effect I apply, it will be at full strength along this line, and then in this direction, that effect will start decreasing. And the gradient can be set using the length of this arrow. So if this arrow is very long, now there would be a very gradual decrease in the effect. So it won't be very noticeable. But if I decrease the length of this arrow, there would be a sudden decrease. So here there would be full effect, and over this very short distance, the effect would become 0. So in this way, you can have an effect decreasing in strength over a particular distance. So for example, this could be really useful in situations where you have one side of the picture brighter and the other one darker, like in this case. You can see this waveform. Here it is touching the top, but here it is the maximum point is right around the middle. So there is a lot of gap here. Even visually, you can tell that there are a lot of highlights in this area, but on this side, there are no highlights. So by using this power window, we can make it more even. And how can we do that? We can basically bring this arrow here, and let's make some color adjustments. So these are basically shadows that we want to lift. So what I can do is I can increase the lift, but where am I applying this? You see, as I move this power window, you see what happens to localized sections of this waveform. See? So in this way, by increasing the length of this arrow, I can further make it customized. This is where the shadows are being pushed up, and then their effect becomes negligible in this direction. So I think we need to flip it around, move it back. So here, these were the very dark areas. So I apply some brightness here. I actually take those shadows and push them up. And then since as I move along this side, the brightness is higher and higher, so I can gradually decrease that effect. And I can basically compensate those shadows with increased brightness for shadows using this window. So as I move it, you can see the effect. See, and by changing the length of this, you can see that the gradient is more now, and now the gradient is less. So I think this looks a little bit unnatural. So let me decrease it a little bit so that the lighting is even on this side as well as on this side. Or actually I can further increase that a little bit, because you see here the shadows are still sitting around half the height of this waveform. So let me further increase it. There is a lot of improvement, and you can see that by toggling this node by clicking on this number. So this is without the effect and this is with the effect, and clearly you can see a lot of improvement. Probably this one would be better. So this is without and this is with that. So another very nice tool, and by adjusting the length of this arrow, we can adjust the strength of the gradient or the amount of feathering from this side all the way to this side. So I hope that now you know how to use all these different kinds of windows to your advantage. So let me reset that, and let me also go back and reset these color wheels. So we are back to the original color configuration. So as you saw, windows give us lots of cool options to make selections and then apply color adjustments on them in very localized way. I hope you found that useful, and I'll see you in the next lesson.